We are live. This is our inaugural episode of the Policy Show by Third Party for the Illinois gubernatorial mock candidate. That's right, a mock candidate. We're going to get more into that in just a bit. Very briefly, I have a total of 3 other guests for today on this policy show. One will be silent, but they represent the person who's watching right now. So feel free to comment. We can see that and we can display it for those watching on both either YouTube or Facebook. So I'm Jerome Bell, founder of Mega School. Mega School is high school, except it's for adults. So whenever you find yourself saying, man, I wish I learned that in school, Mega School is the opportunity to go ahead and learn it right now as an adult. It's like Billy Madison on steroids. Okay, so if everybody can just have a very brief couple sentences introduction. I'll go to my right, Elena.
Hi, good evening. I'm Elena. I'm a self-employed sales professional, and I live in the state of Illinois, United States. I'm just glad to be here for this inaugural meeting and look forward to the discussion.
Roman Morrow.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off of Elena. No, I'm just joking. My name is Roman Morrow. I would say community. I host a show called The Drive at 5 on intellectualradio.com/iHeart radio station. Chicago, a Chicagoan, a product of the Austin community, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. And we have Renitris Pierre. She will be the fly on the wall, but with a presence. And she'll be will be sharing her comments and questions. She is I have a quotation. She is a citizen of the planet looking to replace the current system of racism with justice where no one is mistreated. That is Renitris Pierre. So we'll be, she is directly chatting with us, so we can share that. So yeah, we're just going to kind of get going here. I want to share my screen briefly to describe what Third Party is. Very briefly, Third Party is a political party created by Mega School. So in Mega School, again, high school for adults, our practical civics course is creating a brand new political party from scratch. And we call it literally named Third Party. And it's not ideology based. It's designed to serve as a fail-safe for dysfunctional political system. So it's like a backup generator. And so basically, I don't want to get too much into it, but we're not based on ideology. We just serve as kind of the Avengers. We assemble only when needed. And we share all of our secret sauce. We're a learning platform. We're a place to come together. And we're looking for mainstream policies. So this policy meeting is designed to look all around the political map to discover mainstream policies, not moderate policies. Moderate, in my opinion, just means watered down controversial policies. Nobody can get behind that. We want strong policies that are mainstream, which means there's like 80% plus buy-in. That's all we're looking for. And we want to set an example to be able to have a success model that other parties and other individuals can follow to do what they need to do. So people can go to thirdoption.party. Actually, let me pull it up there, thirdoption.party. That's where you can go to see what I'm showing here. And you can read through it, our principles, our policies, and that's what we'll be focused on today is building out our policies, our strategy, and our mock candidates. This is a new invention of Third Party and Mega School. We're creating fictional candidates. They're like ideal candidates. They're not real people, but we're going to treat these mock pretend candidates, these mock candidates, as if they're real. And so today our focus is the Illinois governor. So if we click here, we're going to go to search for the state offices. So we're filling this out one piece at a time. So we'll select Illinois, and we're a third party. So I'm going to select third party. And you see that the governor of Illinois. Okay, well, let's read more about the third party candidate. A mock candidate. It's not even real. And so some general information. The mock candidate for governor of Illinois, United States, governor Illinois, which party? Third party. Their website. And it's just a preview of the website. So if I actually click on here, it's just going to pop. This site is just displayed on the bottom. So you see here, the image is, we don't know, is it a man, is it a woman? It's a mock candidate for Illinois governor 2026. So this website is going to actually be updated. See the platform here? We're going to actually update it with the content that we go over today. So piece by piece, we're going to build a campaign for mock candidate. And it's a learning process to be able to provide a success template for anyone who wants to run for office, regardless of what party, but how to engage the community and how to listen to them. So that's what we're going to hope to do today. So that being said, the first topic today is policy to consider. So this is for Illinois governors. So this is Illinois-wide policy, is concerning a controversial topic. And our goal isn't to come to an agreement. Our goal isn't to necessarily, our goal is really just to discover what is mainstream and make sure that's getting done. So we want to identify what's mainstream. So changing birth certificate gender, that was kind of the headline here, coming through the news. This one might be quick because we're not looking to come to an agreement or to persuade anybody. We want to discover policies, strong policies that are simply right now already mainstream. But we can just talk about it. You know, changing your birth certificate gender, is that mainstream? Roman, you put me on to this. This policy proposal that's I believe is actually being proposed by actual politicians. Can you tell us just a brief rundown of that, Roman?
Well, Governor Pritzker signed this bill into law that removes barriers for transgender people who live in Illinois looking to change the gender on their birth certificate. Usually, the Vital Records Act requires a statement from a licensed healthcare or mental health professional in order to create a new certificate with a different gender than the one assigned to them at birth. Now, they only need a signed statement affirming their gender identity. Now, for me, I think it needs more clarity and also some type of addendum attached to it. The reason that I'm saying why is because, let's say, for example, you do all the motions of changing your sexual identity from a man to a woman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, pardon, they want me to stop?
No, that's to me.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Kind of like change the sexual identity from a man to a woman, and they did the steps. So now the birth certificate, they go through all these steps. To me, I think it should be that the attachment of an addendum policy to this one is you got to let your partner know your real sex when you were born. Because if they believe that you're a woman and you show them a birth certificate, everything about it, and they believe you're a woman, but let's say they want to have children. You can't have children. But now you're at the doctor's office. Now you're finding out the reason why. That person is fooled. I think it should be a disclosure clause attached to that. And the reason I think, and I can put this out there, is so their partner would have an understanding that once you are told that this was a man at birth, despite the transformation, it's up to that individual to accept or anything before marriage, before any further steps. I think it's up to that partner to accept you or don't accept you. What I'm saying, because of this policy, it basically says that somebody can fool you to marriage, fool you to, for years and years and trying to have a baby or something like that. And they don't know. And sometimes they don't go to the hospital with them. So they don't know. I think it should be a clause to let them know, a transparency addendum attached to this. So I throw the question out there, should it be an addendum clause to have a transparency rule to let their partner know the real sexual identity? So I posed that question out to the to the audience regarding this legislation, because this policy right here, to me, and I'm just saying for personal, to me, they can fool anyone and they can fool anybody. So technology is advanced. So it really depends. So I throw this question out there.
Okay. Maybe we had a technical issue with Elena. She'll be hopping back on, I'm sure. Okay. So I have a comment from Renitris. I'll put Elena back in. My question is, with that comment, Roman, the first thing that pops to my head is it moot? Is it moot? So I will, but I'll put a pin on that. I'll let Elena respond if she has any response. So Elena, do you have any response to comment on what Roman said?
I'm sorry, I got disconnected here. What was the last comment? Just, are you talking about the addendum
Yeah.
transparency clause, just specifically
Yeah.
that? I follow the reasons why you're suggesting to have that clause. I'm just wondering if the clause itself, I won't say necessarily negates the change, the modifying of the birth certificate. It's almost just like how would that affect the actual authenticity, I guess, of the birth certificate, the original birth certificate? Will it still be authentic? I guess my train of thinking is just, will it still be authentic having an addendum to it? What supersedes, what is the superseding document then at that point with the addendum? I do follow what you're saying, and that does make sense to me. I'm just wondering, like, almost like, if you're gonna have an addendum on the original document, what's the like, where does the document stand legally? What's the authority of the document after that point?
Okay, I'll try.
If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes
I'll
sense.
try my best to answer it. If I go far left, let me know so I can veer back. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Policy wise, I would say if not everybody is on the up and up when it comes to, I would say you got to prepare yourself policy wise, just in case, because a lot of people can be fooled. And technology, advanced technology regarding transgender has advanced. and sometimes some people are fooled, some people are not fooled. I'm talking about the people that, kind of like fooled in a sense that really looks like a woman, shaped like a woman, and you don't know they had the surgeries. They're not telling you that. Only thing they're telling you, and there are people, and I'm going to say this, there are transgenders that is very upfront, very, very upfront. And I'm going to say that on the record, very upfront. I'm talking about the ones that you're in the club, you're dating this woman now, and all of a sudden you have intimacy, and you turn out you're in a relationship, now you're going serious, and you're popping the question, and now you're finding out you want to have kids, you want to spend a future with that person. Here's the technicality: you can't have children. The reason why, and there are women out there that just really want to have children but can't. But now you have a question in heterosexual men: is that a transgender? Was that born a man? Was that? And you don't want to play around with that, especially if you were intimate with that person. You want to be upfront with that person. And that's why, and I'm hoping I'm answering your question, because sometimes there are people out there that are not transparent and upfront, and they wait to the tail end of discovering, and the end result is very tragic for some, and you don't want that to happen. And if you look at some of these cases, like, and I'm just going to veer left if I can, Mr. Bell, if I can. There are cases out there that basically out hip hop artists that slept with transgender. Some didn't know, some did know and didn't care. The problem that I have with this bill is easy to fool, and it's not the authenticity of it to say, I'm really a man, I'm really a woman, and it should be a transparency clause, marriage license, that they know that this is a transgender person, versus the birth certificate says anything which they can change. But I just want some type of transparency. Hopefully that answers your question, because there's some foolery going on that they can fool individuals. But then again, there are people that's very upfront about it. We just need something in black and white for transparency reasons, because what if there's no law if someone is deceived by that person? No rule, nothing in writing saying.
Let me jump into oh, did I do this right? This is from Renitris. This is yet another tactic by, in my purview, the dominant society, suspected I think I got that right, racist, who practice sexual confusion and eugenics to further divide and conquer global non-white people. I personally reject all practices current and proposed. And so that's from Renitris. And I'll just say one more because it might sum up, Roman, what you were saying. This is from Renitris again. That's called rape. That's called rape by fraud, when a trans person doesn't disclose gender origin. So those are thoughts from Renitris. My related to the concerns raised by Renitris and Elena's question, and Roman, your concern as well. If we need an official document to tell us once and for all what is your born gender, is that not simply what a birth certificate is? So isn't it? So your concern is valid, in my opinion, Roman. But doesn't that just simply means no? This is not a good policy because it's self-conflicting. It's moot. If people have a right to know in those certain contexts, we already have an official document that tells them what that same information. So it just simply wouldn't make sense to modify the very document that serves a purpose.
Or what we can do, not to interrupt,
No, go
or
ahead.
what we can do policy wise is to use that word you just used, a modified birth certificate, to let people know that it was modified for sexual orientation purposes. So that will let people know, and I think that's a transparency situation. Also, we got to look at, if it's transgender or something like that, we got to look at marriage policy certificates as well, to make sure, because again, it says this man, this woman, blah blah blah, here, the vows and stuff. So if it's a transgender that someone is married, should it be on a birth certificate? I mean, not birth certificate, a marriage license. And should that be a state rule? I want to throw that out there.
So before we jump to that, I see the connection there. Elena, has your question been answered?
I think so. I think what you stated, Jerome, was answering the question. Basically, I was looking for what official document would be the ultimate authority on someone's sex or gender, which if you're modifying it to say, some sort of clause, because I was actually looking up, just briefly, I was looking up some other similar cases, and there was a case in Montana back in like 2018 about this kind of thing, and it listed, this is on Reuters.com, and it listed that they had an administrative rule about birth certificates and gender on there, and there was a case that basically they only changed the sex listed on the birth certificate if it was incorrect due to data entry error, or only if it could be proven that their gender through testing or DNA was to happen according to online state records. So I was just looking to see if there was other examples of this, cases of this as well, but I think you answered it. Just to see what constitutes as the ultimate authority. So
one thing is that, so as far as third party is concerned, and these conversations are good to have, but when we're talking about, is this mainstream? What's being put on the table? Have we identified something that's mainstream that we should make sure or do our best to make the law of the land because it's mainstream? To me, the value of a birth certificate as is serves its purpose, and it serves the purpose that Roman is raised the concern for. It is the official, reliable document to know what somebody's biological sex is. That's already mainstream, unless anyone has reason to believe otherwise. To make that document not provide that value by making it modifiable for these reasons, and at best we just have we have this addendum to the original document that just says, hey, it was changed for this purpose. Is that so? Yay or nay? Do you think is mainstream? There's mainstream buy-in to make this modification, to allow this modification, addendum included, to allow this modification to a birth certificate? Is this mainstream? Yes or no? No, not right, wrong, not what you want or what you don't want. In your honest opinion, is it mainstream to make us to allow such changes to birth certificate?
I'll go.
Huh?
I said I'll go. I would say, is it mainstream? Some people are going to be upset. I would say yes, it is mainstream. It is.
Yeah.
It's mainstream because it sets precedence of the actual birth of an individual. And if it's modified because of preference, and that's the thing, preference of being born of a sex that let's say you're not uh a woman, you want to be a man, and stuff like that. I just really think when we go to official documentation of sexuality, it should be a real harsh, like Elena said, the authenticity. And if it's an authenticity document, then it should be a transformation birth certificate given out at the same time that says, okay, the state recognize you as a woman, the state recognize you as a man. However, your birth certificate is your official document, even though we recognize that. I'll put that up for a debate. But my answer is yes, it's extreme mainstream, but I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time without affecting the transgender community. Even though you agree or disagree, we can kind of come up with a compromise to fit
Not a compromise. Again, not moderate, not watered down controversial policies. I'm saying as is.
Okay.
You have the ability to change your birth certificate gender. I'll leave it at that. Is that mainstream? And you said in one word, yes or no, Roman, before we move on.
Okay, repeat the question. I'm sorry.
Okay, question. Is changing your birth certificate gender, the ability to change your birth certificate gender, is that mainstream?
Yes.
You say yes. Elena?
I would say yes. Yeah.
Okay. Renitra said no, as I put up the comment before. That's interesting. I would venture to say, oh man, I would say no. If people in their people's heart of hearts, I can see people being intimidated and scared and saying yes. See the distinction?
Explain.
Meaning, okay. So if I were to ask people off the record, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask millions of people or thousands of people. Well, in Illinois, talk Illinois, right? Off the record, if I asked them one-on-one, do you think a person should be able to change their birth certificate gender? I would imagine the good majority would say no. However, if they're on the record being asked that same question, I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine the majority of people saying yes, you should be allowed to. Does that make sense?
I agree what you just said. How there's the however component. The however component is, are they doing that for not their personal reason, or are they doing that for appeasement to not seem bashing their sexuality or something like that out in public? I think it's kind of like behind closed doors. I would say they would say no, it's too extreme. But out in the open, I think they would say yes.
Elena, your thoughts?
I think I would want to know what would be I guess, the consequence of it being either way. But I follow what you're saying. I follow what you're saying. I guess where I'm coming from is a birth certificate. I'm seeing it as it's state, but it's also federal. Is nationwide recognized. So anything isn't anything that is federally recognized. Well, I guess I don't know if that's opinion, but I would think something that's federally recognized and used to be mainstream. So that's, for me, it was more that type of line of thinking as to when you said, is changing birth certificate gender mainstream? I would think it would be, because it's at the state level, local, state, and federal used. So
how does that relate to the changing of it?
Well, because I don't really see it being like, well, if this one place, this one locale changes it, that it wouldn't be applicable outside of that area. So if it's just, if Illinois only change, if they only have the right to change it in Illinois, I can't see where, Wisconsin or California.
We're talking from the voter. So the state of Illinois, the voter,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
in their heart of, for the voter,
Mm-hmm.
in the state of Illinois, is changing birth certificate gender mainstream, in your view?
I don't even know if that are you asking, would the majority of people be actually changing their?
No, I mean, I'm sorry. Is the option? Maybe I should put it that way. The option. I'll change the language. So is the option to change birth certificate change? Okay, let me save that and put that back up on the screen.
Okay, it's option to change birth certificate. Oh, then I would say no. Based upon that question, I would say probably not, because then I'm thinking, what are the majority of folks? Are they in that category that are actually going to want the choice to change their birth certificate gender? So I'm just thinking that it would probably be less people that would want the option to than there would be that don't. I think I phrased that right. I think there would be less people that would, I'm sorry, flip that. I think there would be less people that would not want the option than that would want the option. Am I saying that right? Oh my gosh.
So most people do or don't want the option?
I think most people do not want the option.
Got it.
So from that question that you have here, I would say no to that it's not mainstream based upon that question.
I want to pose this question. This is something recent, and this relates exactly to the question that's being presented at hand. Dwayne Wade's son, now daughter, they legally changed his name. Now they're trying to go to the birth certificates and try to change the identity. The transformation has begun for the identity to be transformed to a full-blown, I guess, teenage woman or teenage girl or something like that. The thought process is, let's say if a kid says, I really want this candy, I really want it, and I want it now. And you give it to them. And all of a sudden, the candy gets stale, it gets old, but you made all these modifications so this kid can get the candy. As the kids gets older, the child gets older and does the transformation of eating the candy and so forth and so on. Now they're like, oopsie daisy, I think I made a mistake. I ate too much, the health, the this and that and the other. What I'm saying in essence is, we don't know if Dwayne Wade's, let's say, daughter, and they made the modification changes. That phenomenon, is it because everybody else is doing it? Or is it really what that person wants? And that's a lifestyle change. Is that child have the understanding, once you go through the process of changing your sexual identity, it's hard to revert back. When you say,
now, Roman, what's the connection there? What's the connection there?
When you say option to change birth certificate, it immediately pops up the Dwayne Wade's situation with his daughter.
So what's your thesis?
My thesis is basically, sometimes there are transgender that had their fun. Once they get older, I don't want to do this no more. I want to become my real sex. Now it's hard to revert back. Okay. But when you do it as a child and the parent is giving you the free will because this is what you want to do. You mentioned option to change. Does that goes back to what I said before, that it should be an addendum attached to what they're doing, because there's always a person that wants to revert back to their original sex. But I hope you understand what I'm saying.
The addendum, I mean, unless I'm missing something, the addendum undermines the addendum undermines the whole intent. The intent is to
if we're talking about legalization,
we're basically trying to change the record. So if you have the addendum, then you haven't changed the record.
If you and I'm sorry to talk over talk, but if the policy is you can change, can you change it? You can change it going forward. Can you change it going backwards to the original? Is that the option? Let's say
yes, that's correct.
I didn't change it. That's what I was reverting. The thesis is, with the Dwayne Wade situation, it's a fad to me at that point in time. But now I'm in my 30s. I want to become a man now. I didn't change it. Legally, my parents changed it. Now it's a whole of issues there.
I see what you're saying. You're saying, as a minor, the Dwayne Wade changed his son's birth certificate gender.
Yes.
Dwayne Wade's son is now 30, and he wants to revert it back. If he can't legally change what his father changed when he was 15, I'm making up these numbers for clarity, then he would be upset that he can't correct his own birth certificate gender because it's illegal to make any modifications. Like once you, okay, I see. Interesting point. Now, for the state of Illinois, it doesn't apply. So I do want to, for the sake of practicality, I want to acknowledge that very well could happen. You could get into a situation where laws changing at a certain time, and that could happen. But for the sake of Illinois, that's not the case. And I think what we have all agreed to, and I like the distinction that's come up, is we don't think it's mainstream to have the option to change one's birth certificate gender. And I want to make the distinction of what would people want off the record. Because for third party, if we're going to truly represent people, we need the truth. We don't want the sanitized PC, politically correct truth. We want to know what do people sincerely want, off the record. That's the mainstream we want. The sincere, authentic, mainstream views. So even a poll may not be able to get us that. We kind of have to make a judgment call, and that's why there's an ongoing conversation with these policy meetings for third party. So it seems like we're in consensus that it's not mainstream to make this optional. If unless somebody can, unless that's not true, then I think we wrap this. Hold on. Renitra, are you talking?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was able to switch over to my computer. I was out. So first off, Hotep, everyone, listeners and participants. When we say mainstream, I think there should be careful definition of the word mainstream, because mainstream in most instances, from my experience, implies things that are popular just for societal use, in establishing norms, and also for commercial, basically like things that become regular for, exchanging money, basically trade. Um, so that's why I'm saying we should try to get a definition on that as far as it applies to policy, bureaucracy, and governance. I do not see this as mainstream in those areas of people activity, law, and politics. As of yet, there have been a few instances in which people were allowed to, so they say, I believe one of the states was North Carolina, which I was surprised that there was a naturally born female that was allowed to change her gender to male. But the caveat that everyone should be aware of is this was a white female that was allowed to do that. As far as Dwayne Wade and his father changing his, I don't know if it's true or if he's just saying that. I also know it's kind of interesting that he was given an award by the NAACP for doing so. So I'm thinking the application of mainstream is more toward the gearing and conditioning of not necessarily people our age or older, but everyone younger, to accept this as normal, and then by default make it quote mainstream or a given among those people, because they haven't had the exposure to natural gender norms that we have. And there's so much exploitation of their mind by way of social media now that, yeah, in social media land it's mainstream, but no, not politically. I don't think it is.
Okay. I appreciate the further clarification of mainstream. Renicius, if I could echo that back, mainstream has been in practice, it's been used for programming the masses. So to like the very usage of the word mainstream has often been used to program the common folks understanding, if you will. And so we don't want to slip into accidentally influencing and persuading people into thinking a particular way. We want to simply discover what's already sincerely believed. Now, when I say we, I mean third party. That's the intention, is to simply discover what is sincerely believed by most. So that's the clarification I'll give. We want to discover, mainstream is discovering what is sincerely believed by most. And I would say like 80% plus. So what do folks believe off the record, behind closed doors? We want to identify that, and that will constitute third party policy. But those nuances are extremely relevant because we're talking about politics, so that's very relevant, those nuances. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you all to keep me accountable for being crystal clear on the meaning of mainstream, and making sure I don't have a slip of the tongue or anything like that, because that is the heart of third party, is to be not based upon ideology, but support mainstream policies only. So it can function as a fail-safe or dysfunctional system that ignores the mainstream. Okay. I'm going to say for that policy, seems like, regardless of right or wrong, it is in our view not mainstream. Now it brings up an interesting, because I would then update the mock Illinois governor. I would update the policy to make a stance on this particular proposal, because it was right, Roman. It was presented before the one of the has been presented before one of the legislatures. Can you know offhand?
Actually, it was. Let me see who presented it. But the governor signed it into law, and
it's already done.
Yeah, it's already done. So Representative Katie Stewart, the Democrat in Edwardsville, who filed the bill, the law would not create a requirement that businesses. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong one, by the way. This one was the bathroom one.
So is like, what's this? So again, what?
No. Let me find I'm gonna find.
Okay,
the person.
I'll let you do that. Interrupt when you find it. Okay.
Okay.
So
My
I want
bad.
to
I'm
pivot
sorry.
as Roman finds that. I think we've come to a conclusion.
Oh, I did.
All right.
Senator Laura Fine, of a Democrat from Glenview, the bills sponsored the bill in the Senate that said that advocates should say finding.
Oh, it's in the Senate. It hasn't passed the Senate. It's like,
no, it specifically says Governor Pritzker has signed a bill into law that removes barriers.
Got you.
For transgender Illinoisans looking to change the gender on their birth certificate.
Okay, good enough.
I mean, what I'm saying in essence is that Senator Lori Fine, who sponsors the bill, basically said that it allows Illinois residents to change their legal documents to affirm themselves. Transgender Illinoisans will no longer be barred by medical gatekeepers. That's an exact quote.
Okay, fair enough. So nonetheless, the policy still, as far as third party is concerned, remains, though it is in law, because laws can be changed, which obviously already has happened. So the other item is a pivot, and I think it's a big one, especially for Illinois. We're a big state. New York, Illinois, and California, we have similar issues as big states with big city, one of the largest cities, and that's public unions and the power that unions have over politics. And basically, I got this actually credit to Larry Sharp, Larry Sharp running for governor as a libertarian out in New York. He came up with a proposal of having public unions, like teachers' unions, police unions. Those unions need to negotiate directly with the voters by way of referendum. So they want to raise. Normally, the unions would basically petition the politicians, because they would be the ones to make the decision as to the contract, as to whether or not they have a raise, for example. Now, the policy proposal would be to change the law so that unions must negotiate directly with the voters by way of referendum. So if they want a raise, there will be a referendum. And then the voters will have to vote to have that adjustment in the contract. So instead of the unions spending their money and their energy on persuading politicians to change the contract, to negotiate the contract, they would be spending that time and energy engaging with us, each and every one of us, to change their, say, to give themselves a raise, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the policy proposal, right? And I'm going to try to get that on the screen here as well. But the policy proposal is, should public unions directly negotiate with voters via referendum? I'll put that in there.
That's a toughie. The reason why I would say it's a toughie, because you want transparency and input from the public. You really do. Here's the however component. The however component is, let's say if the public is mad at a situation, will they be transparent to say what you are deserving or not deserving? Will they be transparent to basically say if something goes wrong, or if there's a police matter that's happening while they're negotiating, are they negotiating out of emotion? So that's, to me, is a yes and a no. And I know people hate that, but there is a depends on the front to answer your question. Should public unions negotiate directly with the voters via referendum? I mean, I want to say yes, but then again, there is a flip side to that. So yeah.
Can I say something? Blah, blah.
Go ahead. Let's jump in.
Pardon me. So I don't want to take too long, but I do need to let everyone know that I want to give some detail, because I want to support what I'm about to say. So I, out of curiosity, just now looked up the word union. So it's the act of uniting two or more things, the state of being united. A number of persons, states, etc., joined in association together for some common purpose. So the first thing I'm gonna say is I find it funny that there's a possibility that they would want public unions to have their raises and benefits decided by the public, but the unions that govern the state, i.e., the General Assembly, we don't get to vote on their raises, do we? No, they vote their own. That is a conundrum and an oxymoron, frankly. Second thing is this: I was a union steward in AFSCME when I worked for a state facility, which I will let everyone know the state poorly runs its state run facilities when it comes to the Department of Human Services. And if it were not for AFSCME, when I was in my employ with the state working at a mental health facility for intellectually and developmentally disabled adults, um, I my job basically would have come to a close, and I would have had no benefits after being injured about 5 times. So mind you, they're saying raises because that's a flare. I believe that's a flare because again, you hear raise and the average person is going to think, "Oh, they want more money." But a lot of these unions are also protecting things like the Family Leave and Medical Act, ADA regulations. They're also going to be protecting people again that get hurt on the job, workers' compensation. So I'm not sure, and I don't believe that's going to be a good thing for the public to vote on stuff like that because they're going to do what they always do. They piggyback other things in these referendums. You know what I'm saying? And if you're not a sophisticated voter, you're going to be like, heck no, no raises for them. But then you're also declining other things that these people need. And this is a signal, I believe, to us to get a little more red on politics when it comes to unions because this is how you kill unions. This is a method to try to kill unions. That's been going on. It's been going on for a long time. So instead of just coming out and doing it themselves by way of legislature, they're being more refined because a lot of the unions protect people like me and you, right? But they're going to be more refined and say, well, let the voters decide. And they know most people are not going to educate themselves on the union, the jobs they're providing, and also uh, how that impacts their lives to have these people's unions represent them directly to the state or other entities.
I have a comment on that, but Lena, I'm gonna give you a chance to respond.
Um, that was really helpful to hear that from Renitris because um, I actually don't know a lot about unions, so I'm being educated myself. So that would make sense as far as how educated the voter, the public, is to be able to even negotiate and understand these terms, the negotiating terms, and what the unions would be bringing to the public. So I'm just going to kind of listen to see what you guys have to say on this topic.
Cool. I so Renee, just to your point, that actually that's personally my interest is to get rid of the public unions. My response, and I apologize, I don't have this written up because the final form of this policy proposal was created by Larry Sharp's policy team, and it's just hasn't been written up as of yet, so I couldn't have shared it to you guys ahead of time. But one of the components of it that I just remembered to Renitris's point is rather than getting rid of them, which wouldn't make sense for collective bargaining purposes, we would say if we can't reach an agreement in X amount of time, we would put we would the government would start to solicit worker cooperatives. So basically, the idea is the public unions would compete with worker cooperatives. So thus, a business is the cooperative that's owned by the workers themselves. So that way, the government is actually encouraging, by way of law, collective bargaining, but in the form of worker cooperatives. So if we can't reach an agreement between the teachers union and the people via referendum after say 6 months, then the government would start soliciting basically bids from worker cooperatives, so teacher, school, worker cooperatives.
The only issue I have with that, knowing the history of strike breaking in America, and again, unfortunately, the most consequential thing that America has produced is race. So going toward the Great Migration time period, African Americans coming up from the South were being used as strike breakers in plants in the North and the Midwest, which caused animus among, white people. And so going forward to now, if there's going to be these worker co-ops in which they step in when an agreement can't be reached, the problem is going to be, what if these worker co-ops work under conditions that unions have decided are not safe or not ethical or not feasible for their employees, but now you have workers that are willing to do it. That's literally the situation going on now with people who are being recruited from Central and South America. They're not called co-ops, you know, they're not in co-ops, but they're essentially being enticed to come into America illegally. I just want people to know, when people have this aversion to illegal immigrants, there's programs to provided by the state, which are also funded by the federal government, to recruit people from out of the country to come here and work cooperatively for less money and in conditions you and I, as American citizens, would not comply with. We have to think about that, because unfortunately, we live in a society, in a government, state, local, federal, that likes to manipulate and exploit labor at all times.
Well, in all fairness, though, Renitra, as I think you mentioned, those aren't worker cooperatives. So the worker cooperative, of course, is going to work within their self-interest. The difference is they have equity. I'm not saying it's perfect. I'm not suggesting. I'm just saying the dynamics are just different than the illegal immigrants, the undocumented workers, if you will, versus the public unions, versus private unions, versus worker cooperatives. So I just want to point out that there's nuance, a lot of nuance there. There's those fundamental distinctions between all four of those.
Yeah.
So
Let me
I
clarify something real quick. So what I'm trying to get at essentially is, there's probability and opportunity for a workers co-op to be exploited in the same way as the strike breakers that I was elucidating on during the Great Migration period, and concurrently with Hispanics from the southern regions of the Western Hemisphere. That's literally just the bridge I was trying to make there, that we have to be careful of, because, you know, unless there's now, my question would be back to you: what happens if the workers co-ops find similar instability among their employ during this impasse? Then what's going to be their resolve?
um, so the worker cooperative is having issues with their the government, the one they're working for, providing a service for. What's their recourse? um I mean, really, they would compete directly with the government. So maybe if we go to, well, we can stick with education. Um, if the public teachers union can't reach an agreement through referendum, then they're saying we're going to create a school that's going to be a worker cooperative. Then we could say, then we have to look at the statistics as they are, today, to saying, are basically private schools run as a cooperative, are they competitive for public schools in the same communities? I don't know those statistics offhand, but that would be, if we're looking at the practical reality of the matter, which is what I think what you're getting at, Renitris, that's what we got to look at, is are these cooperatives, worker cooperatives, which would be private companies, are they competitive, meaning they provide a better service for the same community that you would otherwise have public schools, as well as their treatment by their customers, which would be the parents, is better than the arrangement, via the public education system. For, let's say, the police, as an example, if they couldn't reach an agreement, they would create a security firm, that cooperative. And so the question is, could they keep the community safer and have a better relationship with the community as a private firm than the current police are? I don't have statistics on any of that, and so I can't answer it with data. I would be optimistic that that could be done, because we already seen it done. We already seen private schools from elementary to university levels be competitive with public institutions. I know that the wealthy have private security and they're adequate. So I can imagine private security was more common amongst the common folk. I can imagine they would provide us a superior service. For example, calling 911 when someone's trying to break into your house is kind of a ludicrous, outdated way of getting help. A modern private security firm would give you an app where all you have to do is tap a button and they geolocate and go direct to you. There isn't this conversation of 911 when, you know, somebody's trying to break into your house and you're frantic and stuff. So that's one of the first things, you know, the private sector would do in terms of personal security for the community, for example. So ultimately, I don't know data, but I have reason to be optimistic that I'm not saying they're going to be guaranteed to be superior in those situations where an arrangement can't be worked out, but I have reason to believe that they can at least be competitive, so that the people don't suffer for lower quality service. Roman, I thought you were about to say something.
Yeah, I just want to jump in because I know she asked the question on a comment, is there data showing who mostly wants to change birth certificates in Illinois? There's no data, no input to the people or the constituents that they serve. Somebody introduced the bill to the House, it passed the House, it passed the Senate, the governor signed it, it's law. So it was no input until the media got a hold of it. And you can go on. Sometimes there are laws that don't seek nobody's input. So that's hopefully answers your question on that. So there is no data showing that, but however, we can start posing a question to have some statistics on future, should it be an addendum or something attached to it, or what Jerome has said, what Elaine input has said on that. Now, to address the should public unions negotiate directly via voters, with voters via referendum? I recall, if people would bear with me here, I recall when charter schools, if people remember how charter schools came about in Illinois, and they kind of did put some questions into the voting booth that would you be in favor of it or something like that. Now, a lot of people would say this is what the state government did. A lot of people would say, yes, I mean, education, I will have a choice. I want better education, so forth and so on, without telling that the charter school will take some of the funding away from public school. Now, if they would have put that in a proposal, I'm willing to bet you will have a different outcome. So, not for transparency reason, and that's what I said from the beginning to now, nobody is being transparent when it comes to policies and proposals and legislations. And the reason why is they can transform. It's all about the wording, the language of the bill. And some people can pick and choose what to put in or add a fancy word, and people's like, ooh, what's this word? You have to look it up, and then they have a double meaning and you don't know what that meaning is. So when people use this is for the public interest, it has a double meaning. So you don't know if that's a good interest or a bad interest. So I think should public unions negotiate directly with voters via referendums, I would say, okay, if so, because even though the bill is not fully written, what is I would say a good example, such as the charter schools in Illinois that pick words to put into the public and purposely took funding. Like, how's this going to be funded? They said, oh, corporations going to fund it. Yeah, corporations going to do this for the charter schools. And they put that to the test to the people, and people's like, yeah, okay.
Devil's in the details.
I want my son to do that, without saying they're going, in addition to that funding, they're going to take away some public school money to supplement the lack of with the charter school.
Yeah, it kind of, I think the devil's are in the details. And I think, as Renitras brought up, it could be abused, and I would expect it would be abused. I was thinking with a worker cooperative, if in the language of the bill, because ultimately when I write, because all these things we're talking about is going to be written up and documented on the mock governor website. So there's not going to be, that's where you can get the clarity and the detail. To your point, Roman, the circling back to what Renitras was saying, the worker cooperative was kind of the key piece to mitigate everything that Renitras said, except undocumented workers. Now, in all fairness, this is for Illinois state policy. Undocumented workers is a federal issue, and we know that for decades now it's been allowed. Not only allowed, but encouraged. I think everybody knows that now. So
Can I interject real quick?
go ahead.
True story now. Believe me, true story. I was chilling at a day spa and came across two ladies. We were talking, and I asked one of the ladies what she did for a living. After she asked me, and she told me she literally works for the state. So her job is to, as a state employee, is to act as a liaison with corporations in agricultural, you know, functions. Find people that are not documented in Illinois and carry them over to them for employment in farming or in factory work. So we think it's a federal issue, but as the saying goes, as above, so below. So that's something to ponder on. I wasn't trying to throw the immigrants in to offset from what you were saying, because in my opinion, Jerome, I think every business should be a cooperative instead of a corporation, because corporations are very uh kind of, what do you call it, psychopathic in how they operate. They only the CEOs only care about the corporation, the bottom line, and everything else is considered an externality, right? That's a very inhumane way to conduct business. But cooperatives, like you said, if they're owned by the people, managed by the people know, because they're setting the rules, and then there's all this accountability because everyone circularly has the same benefit and uh, liabilities or risks, you would say, then people would be probably work better under those situations. But unfortunately, that's not the setup for most economic exchange. But I just want you to know, yeah, it's a state issue too. That's what I was trying to get to.
Well, thank you for that. It really kind of drives home the point that this law would be powerless to address the undocumented worker situation, because really it's a matter of, at both federal and state level, following the law. I don't know if there necessarily needs to be a law change per se, other than following it. It's our own corruption. So presumably from third party standpoint, because of the nature of to be a fail-safe for a dysfunctional system, the type of candidates that would want to run third party and would be elected under third party by third party voters, those would be the type of candidates that wouldn't perpetuate that corruption at either the federal or state level. So there's some mitigation there, I would think, with third party, just by the nature of it being non-ideological and meant to designed to address the dysfunctions of the system. I was thinking of an example of where unions fail.
I got an example, if possible.
Shoot. Yeah.
One example that I think we should look into is Canada. What Canada is doing now is soliciting illegal immigrants because they have a lack of, I wouldn't say the demand is not there as far as work. The work is there and they need immigrants. So why are they choosing immigrants? My question to the Prime Minister of Canada, why you're choosing immigrants instead of Canadians? So they embrace immigrants. They embrace them because they provide cheap labor. So again, when public unions negotiate directly with the voters via referendums, when you look at what Canada is doing and what they did in past years and decades, they really wasn't on the side of unions per se. And they always use the immigrants for the union. I guess the lack of the union, that's when the immigrants I guess feel that lack. Now it's getting to the point, because of the COVID situation in Canada, they want more immigrants to come up there, and they're giving them living expenses, the list goes on, for productivity, in exchange for productivity. Now, will they automatically be inducted to the union? They didn't say that. So it goes back to the wording, but how they solicit the individual when they say, we're going to give you free housing, we're going to give you this and this and this and that and the other. But what is the catch? What is the aha? Now, we're getting somewhere. They don't really disclose that until you're fully there.
Yeah, so my goal is to construct the policy, document it on the website in detail so that there is no catch. So, for example, I wouldn't literally have a bullet point on the website that says, we believe public unions should negotiate directly with voters via referendums. And that's it, just a bullet point. It would be detailed, fleshed out. And so the practical application is, after this meeting, not immediately after, but after this meeting, this show, I'm going to put it on the actual website. Okay. I'm just going to pull it up here. Again, it's going to be on this website under platform. Let's see if I can even click on it. Now, this is literally boilerplate, people, but it's going to be more than probably 2 paragraphs. Okay. So the accountability is going to be on the website, Roman, to your point. It's going to be on this website. And so the accountability of the level of detail to make an informed decision will be what is on the website. And people can criticize if it's not enough, if there's any loose ends. I think what Renitris has brought up is about the undocumented workers. While it's not inherently related, it is certainly from a practical standpoint related. There's one example, it keeps popping to my head, so bear with me. In terms of racial discrimination. So when unions first started, when factory work was very popular in the early 20th century, early 1900s, and they were mistreated terribly in the private sector. And they said, well, we're going to start a union, which is awesome. They're going to now assert their rights. they had some knucklehead holdouts who wanted to exclude the blacks from the unions. Now, what happened was the blacks were excluded from the unions successfully negotiated a rate, the blacks undercut the unions. They were hired for less for the unions. And that, of course, ticked off the union members, but it's their own fault. The whole point of a union, as Renitra said, is to come together. So how can you come together while keeping people out? So there was conflict amongst the common folk. Now, instead of just getting rid of the knuckleheads who wanted to exclude the blacks so that they can't undercut, they went outside of the private sector. They divested from the private sector, the free market, and they invested in government. They said the same rate that union wanted to get with the employer, they said we can't get that rate because the blacks are undercutting us. So then they got the minimum wage. And so the minimum wage was the same rate that the unions were trying to make with the employer. So now when you have a minimum wage, now the blacks can't undercut. So then the unions, in their discrimination, they're not paying the price of their irrational behavior and unjust behavior. So now the common folk divested from the free market, invested in the government, and now the employer has less respect for the worker because the workers are divided. Now the employer is more inclined to negotiate with the government because the common folk delegated power to the government because they couldn't cooperate. And so what Renicius was alluding to again was that this corruption between the corporation, that's the business, and the government. And so the ability for the free market to sort it out was exactly that. It means no minimum wage. You're going to pay the price for your irrational behavior, and that's being undercut. So ideally, probably what would happen over time is either they let the blacks into the union if there was no minimum wage, or the blacks would just create effectively a cooperative where you just don't have the nonsense in the first place. Now, with that, it's interesting because undocumented workers, there's some overlap with that history because undocumented workers, they do go under the minimum wage. They're being paid at fair market rate. And so because it's a minimum wage, even a worker cooperative has limitations on how competitive they can be with the undocumented workers, the illegal immigrants, because they're operating outside of the law. So I just want to bring that up to say, there's examples of where unions succeed and where they fail, both in the private sector and in the public sector. And the worker cooperative, I think, is a much better solution than unions, both private and public in general. But that still doesn't answer the question of the illegal immigrant who simply is paid at fair market rate, but by way of breaking the law. So I think that somehow, some way, I think we should speak, if this is a policy that we think is mainstream, I think we need to at least address the illegal immigrant issue and how it can undermine this whole intention of collective bargaining being undermined by the government undermining its own laws by allowing illegal immigration. I don't have an answer. I just want to put that out there, is that there's a limitation to the effectiveness of this proposal because we're not addressing, or have yet to address, illegal immigration. So I don't know if I'll leave it at that if it's just a, comment statement, but somebody can, I don't know if anybody has thoughts on that. Wasn't trying to solicit conversation off of that, but I just thought it should be said.
We have to also consider payment. We hear payment and the first thought is money, but going back to what I was saying about unions in general, or jobs in general, when you get a job, you are getting a job for a wage or a salary. You're also getting the job for other, again, benefits. Illegal immigrants, and at the time, you could make a parallel to, again, African people leaving post-bellum South for the northern regions, western regions, and the Midwest. Both of these people were not in essence kind of uninvited by the people who were already there. Number one. Number two, they didn't have the same amount of verse when it comes to the negotiations and the again the benefits and pay that these people had built up to, right? So when it comes to illegal immigrants, they're also sacrificing, not just they're getting paid, they're going to get paid lower, but they're also sacrificing outright benefits, vacation, sick time, uh again, workers compensation. um I might be missing something else, even let's say even the ability to get redress on the job if there's harassment. You can go online right now and Google lawsuit after lawsuit at these packing companies where people are saying, "Hey, I've been forced to work 18 hours a day or almost 24 hours a day in the middle of COVID. We don't have any PPE." You see what I'm saying? So it's not just the issue of they're going to be paid what would be considered fair market value. Yeah, the payment may be considered that, but they're also not going to be getting a ton of other stuff that these unions literally have been fighting for like half a decade, some of them, to make sure these employees have. And again, if the public does not understand this is a comprehensive thing, when they hear, oh, there's a referendum for this union to get a pay raise and you're going to be able to vote on it, they're going to be going in myopically. And then the other thing we also have to be careful of with unions, because some of the unions that are at the forefront, or what you said, or somebody else probably said, teacher unions and police unions, people are forgetting there are unions for doctors, for nurses, there are unions for paramedics. There's, matter of fact, the union for the trains, come to find out, for at least the past 4 or 5 years, maybe more, they've been negotiating with they've been negotiating to have these trains that keep derailing, guys,
Mhm.
to have at least two people on the train. That's something they have to negotiate. Now imagine, again, a person that does not want or have the time to actually find out what it takes to operate a locomotive, that here's, well, they want a raise and they want these benefits and they want more vacation. That person who might not even have a job that's protected by union benefits might be like, I don't care. No. Or they might not vote at all because they don't have enough understanding. So now what they're doing, again, it seems like a tactic to 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 derail the protections. I'm not saying unions are perfect, but it just seems like a very, very nice and tricky tactic to kill whatever unions have done if you wedge everyday people in between these issues, especially if they don't have, as they say, a dog in the fight. I went to Walgreens not too long ago and had an issue, right? And I could tell them, those people, they just there, they working and they just trying to get through the day. They don't have a union to protect them. They're just hourly employees. So try to get them to understand union issues and issues with I'm a mute. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. I am gonna put it up and banner. Show it. All right. Public unions shall negotiate directly with voters via referendums. Mainstream. If I just have one more, I had a comment on what Renicius was saying. Oh well, if it comes to me, I'll bring it up. But
I just
the education. No, before I forget it, the education piece. Unions are already spending millions of dollars to fund politicians, and so they're spending a significant amount of time and energy, time, money, and energy. And so, Renitris, the mitigation is that same time, energy, and money would be dedicated towards the education of the masses so that they can ultimately come to an agreement. And so there would be, so basically the funding for proper education of the masses is already there. It's in the unions. It'll just be directed to us instead of the politicians. I'm not saying that's foolproof, but that would be the intent.
I just want to jump in right quick, and she made some very good, valid points, especially when it comes to CTA and trying to get a conductor for years, I believe, when they stopped pulling the conductors off for safety, that the safety issue was never an issue when they pulled them off. They thought it would be an easy way to get over, and now we see the need for a conductor to be on, not only to oversee passengers for safety measures on the train, but also to make sure that the train is working properly, or something like that. So yeah, I think when we come to these type of measures for CTA, these kind of measures when it comes to education, these kind of measures when it comes to unions, period. I mean, right now, you look at the mayoral race, you have a candidate for unions, and you have a candidate that's business, executives, the list goes on and on. So I'm not saying he's anti-union. Only thing I'm saying is you have business and you have unions. Unions is going to push their agenda. That doesn't mean if you agree with it or you disagree with it. But if you're the candidate, you're pushing a union's agenda, whether you agree with that candidate or not, they're going to say, vote for this person because he's going to or she's going to push their agenda, meaning the union's agenda, no matter what it is. So again, it goes back to the language, but it also goes by the agenda, what they're pushing. So we don't know, we're not privy to the agenda they're pushing right now towards education, the CTA, crime, the list goes on and on here in Chicago. However, what we do know is there's union versus business. That's all I have to say. To put some perspective on it, because I just think that people are not really looking at it that way.
I mean, this hopefully, well, I would hope this would help mitigate that, because if the unions are interfacing with us directly, because that's the only way they're going to get it done, and they're spending those millions of dollars to educate us, to engage us, to know where our headspace is, not where the politician's headspace is. And so I would like to see that, sever the ties of the relationship with the politicians and build the relationship with the people. That will be the intent. Whether it's nothing guaranteed, but that'll be the intent, is to establish the effort. The time, energy, and the money is already a significant amount of time, energy, and money is being spent trying to persuade. It would just be redirected to us, the people. They're not going to just allow their contracts to falter or anything like that simply because they put a terrible marketing campaign. They're going to figure it out. But let's now, we may not this is a big issue. Like the idea of public unions and this change would fundamentally change how unions work in this state. So it's not a small question, and maybe we haven't really done it justice. We're not going to go on and on, but I would like to at least raise the question. I mean, are we feel comfortable in making an assessment of, is this mainstream? Public unions negotiating directly with voters via referendums. Is this mainstream? Again, that means in people's heart of hearts, behind closed doors, off the record, are they in favor of this? What do we think?
I don't know. Frankly, I have to be in the middle and say I don't know. I think if you are in a union, you're thinking about it, and if you're not, it's kind of like let me make a another parallel. People in mass aren't thinking about what the Wiccans are doing that Sunday. They're not. You get what I'm saying? It's so far. They're so distant from each other in a way that you have to be in that sphere to be conscious of it. But it could be that I don't know. Maybe I haven't asked enough people to know what they know about unions. I just haven't heard it expressed.
Okay.
I I will probably side with her on this because it can go either way because it always involved with the intent, and it goes back to what we said earlier. Are are you being real with us? Are you saying everything? Are you conveying everything? Are you leaving pieces out? Are you being real with us? So if it's mainstream, because I know you can't have two or more. I would say I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, for right now, no, because we need to have an an education component and somebody to school us with it. So I will just basically say no for right now. But I am in the middle, but I will just say no, no for right now. To give you a concrete answer, no, it's not mainstream right now.
Elena?
I'm still here. I would have to say I'm probably undecided on it as well, because maybe I represent those that need to benefit from that education component. So just need to know where that would be for the general public to see if they would be willing.
Yeah, for myself as well, I honestly don't know. Um, this would be a huge paradigm shift, and I feel like people would really have to appreciate the way it is right now and the way it could be. And I don't think most people have really appreciated either. I'm not seeing most people making an informed decision and not being willing to make an informed decision on this. So I will. There's a policy meeting this Tuesday with Larry. I probably will have the exact text that they have, and that will be kind of pretty much a copy and paste of what the proposal is in detail, Roman, to your point. And I would say the next practical step for third party is to just have a conversation, have it documented what the policy is in adequate detail, and then just to ask around, because I don't personally know. So just to know where people stand. But I do think it's a question worth asking. It would have profound impact if this were implemented, I think, anywhere in the United States, really. Well, cool. With that, I want to thank you all. We're really at time. And we got through 2 policies, changing birth certificate gender and public unions negotiating directly with voters via referendums. 2 juicy topics, many more to come. Many more to come. And I just want each and every one of you to think about topics that are near and dear to your heart, to consider talking about those. And I'll just collect those from you and anyone watching, either live or the recording. Feel free to post in the comments what policies you want to hear. And again, is really third party isn't focused necessarily on right or wrong per se, ideologically wise. We just want to discover across the political map what's actually mainstream. Okay, behind closed doors, off the record, in heart of hearts, what do people really want? We want to discover that, and we want to make that our policy and make that known to the public and get it done, either directly or directly for third party. So with that, if anybody, before we head out, you want to kind of do a little promo for yourself, how people can reach you, and for Roman, I'll kind of go clockwise. Roman?
Join me Mondays, intellectualradio.com/iHeartRadio station. The Drive at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time.
I just want to thank you, Jerome, for this, and I'm just going to promote you and support what you're doing with Mega School. I think is great. Thanks so much. And once I have something cooking, I'll let you know.
Yeah, so big up to Mega School and everyone on the panel. I am a graphic designer by trade, and I have a bumper sticker available at elect-sanity.com. If you could put that out there, Jerome.
Yeah.
They're really cool. I want to say that they're holographic. And I'm also working on some other positive social promotions. So I'll announce that later. I'm kind of alluding to it in my with my avatar. But yeah, so thank you for inviting me, and I'll be here for the next hotel.
Yeah, I hope all of you can join in the next time and in the future. Always welcome. Thank you all. And with that, thank you everyone for watching and who is watching this the inaugural mock candidate for Illinois governor policy show. Have a good night, everyone.
Peace.
Night.